to market on close. Shares of Nvidia are down about 8% on the week as the rest of the overall market has lagged. Comments from CEO Jensen Huang earlier this week spooked investors when it was reported that he said China is going to win the AI race with the U.S. He later clarified his comment, saying that he thought that China has very good AI technology. Now it's time for Options Corner. Of course, Nvidia is the focus. Joining us, our lead market technician, Rick Ducat, here to take a look at Nvidia, some of its recent performance and some of the technicals here as well. I was just mentioning it's under pressure along with the broader market this week. But as we look at Nvidia, against the market and also the semiconductor space, how is it stacking up?
Kind of in the middle of the road, the pack rather, I guess you could say. The semiconductor sector has been kind of the strongest of the strong for a while, but Nvidia, which was once such a big outlier, has now kind of come back to earth a little bit here. You can see it's up a little less than 26% versus the SMH, which is up about 32%. If you were to look more specifically at the direct competitors to Nvidia, Broadcom, AMD, Intel, Taiwan Semi, they're all doing better. They're up 44 to 88%. Nvidia is down here 25%. The beleaguered Qualcomm is the only one who's kind of below at about 1.6% down on the year here. But, it's been a not very good week for this whole space here. Another story that caught my eye, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman had to clarify that he didn't want government bailouts, basically, if things started to go poorly for OpenAI. And, remember, too, Jensen Huang, He's saying these things about the AI race. He also wants to export the chips to China. It's kind of a grain of salt type of thing to consider these comments with as well. If we were to look a little bit more specifically, though, at this chart, our candle chart here, we can see that our white trend line here has been fairly consistent for the past couple quarters here. That's about where we bounced here today in terms of our opening price. We did make some intraday lows beyond that, but rallying a little bit here as we conclude what's been a bit of a rough week here. Crucially, we did not test this 177 level, these old lows that we established here from a few weeks ago. We are holding on above 185 as well, which was the ceiling from this period. We since breached it, but recovered back above it here, still off significantly from those old highs near 212.19.
We're barely holding on to that 185 line right now, trading at 186.99, 98, moving around right around there, but barely off that line. As we look at some of the trading action today in terms of the options activity around Nvidia, knowing it's been a bit of a rough week in the space, what's it looking like?
About as heavy as you can get in the stock market for options trading. At the time I checked, it was over 4.7 million contracts changing hands. Extraordinary numbers here. 65% or so were calls. Sizzle 2.0 at the time I checked, so heavier than the 5-day moving average. If we were to consider looking ahead, our November 21st expiration here, about 11.2% expected move plus or minus, so it's moved a little bit since I set this up here. But still, generally speaking, that's about where we would expect things to go based on the options market. Notice as well that lower end lines up very closely with the 165 level here, a notable low point, a high point before our gap, and then another low point here. So that kind of stands out to the downside here. To the upside, 207, pretty close to the +1 standard deviation channel. So that gives us at least some rather larger extreme ranges to consider in the coming days here. For what's been a rather interesting week, to say the least.
It certainly has. As far as open interest goes with calls and puts, how are we seeing that weighted? It's been under pressure. So, I'm imagining we're seeing some put action maybe a bit more than normal.
For sure. I mean, the month of Nvidia is much larger than the total open interest for all the dates of expirations possible for many other stocks here. But what stood out to me for November, on the call side and the put side, the 180 strike is the most active. So that seems to be one really important area based on that options market to consider here. You can also see, too, that we saw some pretty notable trading activity as well across the board here. But what really caught my eye was some very long-dated options. There was minus 29,836 January 21st, 2028, 300 calls. They sold these at a $23 credit here, a $68 million credit received for this opening trade. Really huge numbers.
That is a huge number, and their earnings will be inside of that window. So a very interesting trade there. Thanks to Rick Ducat, our lead market technician, for joining us for Options Quarter to highlight Nvidia today.